Hey everyone, welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to learn about Icelandic history, language, nature, and culture. My name is Jules, and I've been living in Iceland for 4 years now, and there have definitely been some things that I realized that would have been great to know before moving here. And really, I wasn't tapped into the foreigners in Iceland. Like, I learned more about like the different groups and everything, and got advice from people like that I randomly met. So I figured that for anyone who is ever planning on moving here or even visiting for a decent amount of time, it might be helpful for me to share with you the things I wish I knew before coming here. And I just hope that you find it interesting, helpful, whatever, because I really wish someone had shared this with me before I ended up moving 4 years ago. So before I jump into it though, make sure that you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on videos like this where I'm sharing helpful tips, stuff about my life, insights about living here, and all that jazz. One of the things I really wish that I had been fully aware of before moving here is that if you've lived in Iceland for 6 months or more, you're supposed to get an Icelandic driver's license. I have a valid US license, specifically from New York State. And as a visitor, if I'm here just traveling in the country for a month or a few months, it's totally fine for me to use that valid license from the US. For people who end up moving here and you're outside of the European Union or like these different EEA or EFTA countries, so this is US people here and maybe even Canada as well, but definitely US, I can speak 100% for that, you have to get an Icelandic driver's license. And the thing is, it's not like you just go and say, okay, here's my valid license, please give me an Icelandic one. Nope. You basically have to go through a little bit of like the process of as if you were a new driver, because there are roundabouts here in Iceland that are not something that people from the US are used to driving in. The rules are different, and actually they're even different from some European countries, but whole nother story. I think Icelandic people are afraid or just being cautious about the fact that maybe not everyone understands how that works. So they want people from the US to go through having a driving lesson with a certified teacher here in Iceland, and then taking the test. So you have to take written exam. On top of that, you also have to take the driving exam. So it does cost a little bit of money for you to, have a driving teacher come get you, you drive around just to show them that you know how to drive. They sign off to say, okay, you know how to drive. And then you have to pay as well to go take the written exam. And the crazy thing about this is that that exam is a bit tricky. There's sometimes more than one right answer for a question. So it's not just like, everything's a multiple choice, but if you don't get both of the right answers for that question, you get a point off for the one that you didn't choose or whatever. It's super annoying and unnecessary in my opinion. I'm not gonna rant about this, but yeah, this is to say that like amongst foreigners who had to take this is the one thing they're always like, why? And then on top of that, after you've passed that written exam, you can then take the driving test with a person who sits in there and observes you driving around a neighborhood. FYI, I really wish I had known this, because I thought it was just because I had a valid license and had been driving in Iceland before as a visitor that it was easy peasy, no problem. Not the case. Keep that in mind. Another thing I really wish I understood when I got here in 2016 is to never take a sunny day for granted, okay? This is such an important part of life here that didn't settle in for me until about 1.5 years into living here. 2016 was an amazing summer in Iceland. It was really beautiful. It wasn't the best summer I've ever had. In fact, 2019 was the best summer for sure, hands down, that at least since I've been living here, and since many people can remember who have been living here all of their lives. So just know that if it's sunny outside, meaning there's sun poking through the clouds or it's blue skies, calm weather, go outside, use it. Those days can sometimes be far and few in between. I remember in 2018 when we had the most rainiest summer on record or something of that nature. I don't remember seeing the sun for many, 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 many days. And when I did see the sun, I was like, oh, there's that beautiful glowing globe in the sky. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And I just was grateful and almost like cried a little bit because I was like, I had been getting a little bit into a funk, not even realizing it because I hadn't been seeing the sun. It was just cloudy and rainy and windy and cloudy and rainy and windy over and over again for days at a time, maybe even like a week at a time or something. So it's just within the nature here in Iceland, meaning like the people are understanding of that, so they try their best not to take it for granted. And the company that I worked for at the time, which was an outdoor travel company, they would sometimes leave like 3:30 in the afternoon if it was a beautiful day and be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go out and go hiking, or I'm gonna go and sunbathe or go to the pool or whatever, because taking advantage of those days meant that you would get that like vital sunshine, of course, but also good use of that weather that might not come again for a while. At the same time, it's really important to realize that you shouldn't let the weather deter you from going outside. And of course you don't want to go out when there's like a severe weather storm or something, but if it is drizzling, if it had been snowing, if it's a little icy, whatever, still go outside. Go for a walk, particularly in the winter time when it's so easy to like hole yourself up in your cozy apartment or house and you just prefer not to be out in the darkness. But at the same time, getting out into nature is what helps a lot of people to be able to get through winters, which is really dark, or to feel like they're not getting some cabin fever because they're continuously making themselves stay in their house. All too often, as I'd mentioned just previously, the weather here can be quite rainy. So you're gonna find many days where your excuse might be, oh, it's raining today, I'll go out tomorrow. And then it rains for the next week and you haven't been really going out to get some fresh air or any exercise or just to kind of like enjoy the surroundings that are so beautiful here in this country. Just going out is an important thing to do. And of course, being able to dress properly for that weather. I wish I had understood how to dress properly for Iceland, whether it was to go on a hike, whether it was just to go for a walk. I had a not so great raincoat when I first came here. It was like okay, but not for the type of horizontal rain that comes here, in which I'd have like, you know, my face and everything. I'm trying to cover up my hood and it wasn't staying up. So I invested in a raincoat from Patagonia, which has served me really well. When I worked at the outdoor travel company, I was able to learn a lot about layering my clothing and all of that information that I got in terms of for visitors, and I've shared this of course with visitors and people that live here, has served me so well, and I feel really grateful to have that information. And actually what I did is I created an ultimate packing checklist for Iceland, because I feel like these are essential things to know, not just for the weather, but just in general the things that you should bring for the country, whether it's summer or winter. And it's a free guide, free checklist. You can check it out in the description box below. I highly recommend it, whether you plan to live here or you plan to visit, whatever short period of time, long period of time, it will serve you well, because there are certain essential things you need. And then on top of that, if you want to go out partying or out to dinner, I have tips in that checklist for those types of circumstances too. But just kind of getting back to the fact that I was not wearing proper clothing, and eventually I learned it, which was nice, but it's just good to kind of have that beforehand. Plus, things are expensive here, so I didn't want to buy any of the clothes here. I had to wait until I went to the US or just somewhere abroad where I can order things in order to make sure that I could get what is properly needed for dealing with the weather. One of the most surprising things when I moved is knowing that it is super easy to be a plant-based, or if you want to call it vegan, person in Iceland. And Icelanders in general are really big on like hopping on trends. So I wouldn't say now that veganism or plant-based eating is a trend. It's definitely being more integrated into people's lives, whether they're doing meatless Mondays or they're going completely plant-based or vegan. However, Iceland isn't known for that, meaning their culture is based traditionally off of like smoked meats, dried fish, fresh fish, not a whole lot of plants, right? Because it's hard to grow things here. There are greenhouses now, but back in the day it wasn't like that. I mean, you get some potatoes and stuff like that, but it wasn't like you'd have a variety of things that was being imported. And even if they were, it was probably too expensive for the majority of people to afford it. Now, it's still expensive, but nowhere near like the exorbitantly expensive cost that it could be. And even though I visited 5 times and I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of options, that has exploded since I've been here. So if you do care about being on a plant-based diet, or you call yourself vegan, whichever that is, or you just sometimes want to have those options, Iceland has a ton, specifically in Reykjavík. I'm just gonna say that because that's my personal experience within the city that is Reykjavík, which is the capital of the country. I can't speak for everywhere else in the country, even though I have been to stores in other places, but the variety of different types of stores, like say for instance, there's actual vegan store in Iceland where they only sell vegan food and they have a great variety of stuff. It's called búðinn. I totally recommend checking it out. I'm actually gonna make a video about the different vegan places to eat here, because there are restaurants where they're just completely vegan, as well as there are many restaurants in Iceland, the majority of them actually, that have some type of vegan option now on the menu. So just in terms of that kind of variety, and if you're a keto person, which is on the other opposite end of the spectrum, that is something that is accommodated, of course, in this society where meat has been a big part of the diet. But for a person like me, I was so happy and relieved that this wasn't an issue, and that there were Icelandic companies that were coming up with their own vegan products. And I've just been overjoyed with the whole thing. For me, being a plant-based / vegan food eater has more to do with how my body feels, and it has just been such a great experience being able to get whole foods in my body. I'm not very big on eating artificial meats or whatever, not to say that I never eat them, and they are available here, but I also can get things like dried beans or fresh vegetables in order to make the foods that I really enjoy. Before I moved to the country, I was starting to learn Icelandic on my own just a little bit. And I mean a little bit meaning like I was learning all of these words and working on the pronunciation with my husband. So he has been crucial in helping me to learn how to pronounce Icelandic correctly. It is not an easy thing to do. Learning the language has not been easy. I am still a work in progress, I always say when people ask me how that's going, mainly because it's a lifelong thing. But Icelandic has a layer of difficulty on top of it that many languages don't have, including the fact that it's so old and hasn't changed much for so many centuries, that it has these complexities built into the language that can be really confusing for people who are learning. And without consistency and really working at it, it's not easy to just come and pick up Icelandic. Unless you're going to be on a farm where no one speaks the language and they'll only talk to you in Icelandic and you just have no other choices, you'll learn it, but otherwise you're not. And there are people who've been living here more than 20 years who still can't hold a conversation in Icelandic. So knowing that when I came here, that I'm not just going to be surrounded by Icelandic and pick it up like that, or even just after a couple of years pick it up, that part wasn't, I wouldn't say astonishing to me, but it was pretty amazing to realize that it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of consistency. And I want you to know that if you're watching this and you're a person who's either pursuing learning the language or have been thinking about it, don't let that discourage you. If you are really interested in doing it, of course it will be hard work, but at the same time it's doable. There are plenty of people who come here and they learn the language. It has nothing to do with your intelligence. If you're struggling with learning the language, you're still an intelligent individual. maybe there's just some different things you need to change up in order to make this work out for you. It could be getting a personal tutor. It could be you need to come to the country and go for the bachelor's program. It could be you need to go into an intensive course. Like there are just many different reasons why it doesn't necessarily work out for some people and they get really frustrated. It's also a part of the process. So I learned so much in regards to Icelandic, and I'm a person that is very ambitious, and I at one point was linking my value to how well I was able to learn this language because other things have been easier for me to pick up. But I realized that they're not the same and they're not tied together. I'm still an intelligent person that brings value in different ways as I'm learning this language, and if I continue to be consistent, I'll see my growth. So I needed to kind of learn that for myself and my own sanity, and also just let that be part of my ambition to get better. I was hoping it would be a lot easier of a journey, but you don't grow with that. So I've heard this before, a quote that with challenge comes change. And I definitely feel that is what happens with Icelandic and learning a language in general and kind of integrating into a culture. So just know that it is possible, you can do it, don't give up, be consistent. Know that before moving here, or know that before you decide tackling a language like this one. It's pretty funny the things also that you can sometimes take for granted when you live in a country like the United States. And one of them is transferring money. So transferring money within Iceland to other Icelandic people or people who are living in the country and have an Icelandic bank account is super easy. That part, no problem at all. Transferring money though to the US, for instance, is a pain in the butt, and before they changed the system, so I guess I should go back to the fact that after the crash in 2008, there were a lot more stricter rules put in place in regards to banking here. And transferring money is one of those things that definitely saw more restrictions. At one point when I moved, I could only transfer money if I went into the bank. Like I couldn't do it online. If I went into the bank and went through the process on their computer, and the bank is only open from 9 to 4, I think, or something like that, at least the bank that I'm with. So I had to do it during my lunch hour, which is super inconvenient. And that was just how it is. And then eventually they moved it online. Now I can do it, but again, you can only do it on weekdays from 9 to 4. So these are always on weekdays, not on the weekends. So these restrictions can be a little annoying, and if you don't know that, then it can get frustrating. And knowing that it might take 3 to 5 days for that money to get to the account. Now, I have not been transferring any money from the US to Iceland, which is another tricky thing, like if you have PayPal or whatever else. So just know that there are these rules in place and some restrictions when it comes to transferring money overseas. Specifically, I'm talking about the US because that's where I had the experience, and it might be for other countries too. And it could be a frustrating thing for you, but come in realizing that you just probably would need more information around that. There are groups on Facebook, for instance, that are super helpful, like the Americans Living in Iceland group if you're planning to live in the country, or away from home living in Iceland, for instance. These types of resources in which people have had to go through the same thing have been invaluable to me to be able to search those groups and find out resources or information in order to tackle any problem that I'm having, particularly this one around transferring money, which I'm talking about now. And then speaking about Facebook, like everybody in Iceland is on Facebook. Maybe not as much the very young generation, like teenagers and kids below that because of TikTok, but like more than 90% of Iceland is on Facebook. The funny part about that to me is that Icelanders love to friend people. And at my job, when I first got there, and just like random people that I would meet, if they could spell my name correctly and find me, they would find me. Like after I met them, after like the first day or something, I think after my first week at my new job in 2016, I had like 40 new requests for friends. And I was like, who are these people? And it was of course like a lot of people that I had met through Gunnar, my husband, or through work. And maybe I don't remember everybody because the names at the time just were really unfamiliar to me and kind of confusing. So I'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that face or whatever else. But I was just getting all these friend requests. And that was not something that I expected at all. When I worked in the US, if someone I met at work we were friendly, it wasn't very automatic for me or that person to go onto Facebook and friend me or for me to friend them. And this just here is like a lot of people are so interconnected, and it doesn't even matter if you talk to that person that often. Like there are plenty of the Facebook friends I have on from Iceland, and I'm just like, I hardly even talk to this person. And we work in the same place, right? but we're connected. So just FYI, if you were to move here, you might end up experiencing that. And it's funny, there's no harm done. I mean, obviously you don't have to accept the friendship if you don't want to. I still get some really random ones where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've never met this person, but maybe it's because they saw me on YouTube. Maybe it's because they see me on Instagram, whatever it is. And so I try to figure that out a little bit beforehand because I don't have anything that I'm hiding on Facebook. In fact, my profile is probably pretty open, but at the same time, it's just like, I don't know, should I friend this person? I don't know, whatever. But just FYI, this is something that could potentially happen to you when you move to the country. Another surprising thing to me that I wish I had known before moving is that being a foreigner has actually worked in my favor. And I mean that from a standpoint of, it's a point of like conversation for people. Icelandic people are very curious. They like the fact that people come from other places and visit the country. They're always like, why would you move to Iceland? Like, this is like the #1 question. And especially because I'm from New York City, there's this idea of like, what? You moved to Iceland from New York City? Why? You know, like, and actually, if you're curious about that, I do go over that in a video about why I moved to Iceland, and I'll link to that in the description box so you can check that out if you're curious. And there are 3 main reasons why I did that, but I digress in that regard because I've always thought that like being a foreigner could be a negative thing potentially. You just need to like get yourself in there and assimilate and whatever else. But in reality, it brings diversity, and it brings opportunity for you to talk with natives or even people from other countries that decide to move here about your views, about your customs, about your cultures. And it's just been a really nice thing. And where I work, because I come from an environment that is different than in Iceland, so working culture-wise as well as the way that I think, it has helped to enhance my experience there. I become a part of the team in a different respect because I can relate to people that maybe we're trying to target in marketing. I can tap into the knowledge that I've gained from my experiences living in another place. So being a foreigner here can be a very positive thing. Is that the case for everybody? I don't know. I won't speak for everyone, but I can say for myself that I wish I'd known that, because at first I was a little afraid that being a foreigner might work against me. And also there are some like potential faux pas that you can commit in Icelandic society. Let's just say if they thought I was Icelandic and I didn't understand some of the customs, then the Icelandic people might look at me like, what's wrong with you? Whereas like as a foreigner, you're forgiven much easier because they realize you're from another place and maybe you just weren't aware of that thing. And they're more willing to like be like, okay, this is how you do this specific thing, or this is how we say this thing. Maybe they'll giggle at you if you make a mistake. But on the whole, it ends up being that I think, just personally speaking, being a foreigner has been a very positive experience. And I will always be a New Yorker, for instance. Like, as long as I live in Iceland, I will always see myself as a person who is from New York City, even though I'm sure my actions and everything else have changed, but it has just shaped who I am as a person. And Iceland is also shaping who I am as a person, but as an adult. So it's a very different dynamic. But I love the fact that I have felt really accepted here, as well as been able to bring something valuable to the country, and then also be able to receive valuable experiences from the people that live here. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and you found it helpful to get some insights from me regarding what I wish I had known before moving to this country, which is a lot of things, to be honest. And I also think that just in general, moving to another country comes with a whole lot of things to think about, to consider, and all that jazz. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this where I kind of share my personal experience and things I've learned, or I'm potentially able to give you some insight on, definitely let me know in the comments, because I don't mind sharing some things. I'm not going to go too deep into my life, but for the most part, I do like being able to share insight if it's something that would be able to help some people. And I'm always happy to know what you're interested in learning about regarding me or Iceland. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.